Welcome to another video from the United Career Coalition, created to provide insights and advice and tips for those who have applied, interviewed and secured UN system roles. Welcome to another one of our videos. If you are new to our content, please subscribe using the red button below to ensure you get the latest updates as we create more content following your feedback. We hope you find the video useful. Okay, so what will we cover today? Sustainable Development Goals and how understanding the SDGs can help you get your foot into the United Nations. Understanding the United Nations core values when looking to start a UN career is obviously key. When applying for UN jobs, however, it's also important to make yourself familiar with some of the UN's initiatives, such as the Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs. This video aims to give you a quick intro and overview of the SDGs and their importance in 3 easy parts. The first part will cover what are the SDGs. So what are Sustainable Development Goals? Part 2, how can we promote sustainable development? And part 3, what can you do? So let's get started. So what are the SDGs? The SDGs, Sustainable Development Goals, also known as the Global Goals, are 17 global goals set by the United Nations General Assembly back in 2015 as part of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development, and as part of a wider and universal call to action to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure that by 2030 all people can enjoy peace and prosperity. These goals aim to end poverty, protect the planet, and ensure peace and prosperity for all by addressing critical issues such as health and well-being, quality education, gender equality, clean water and sanitation, affordable and clean energy, and many more. The SDGs are an intergovernmental agenda and serve as a blueprint for global cooperation and action towards a sustainable future. The 17 SDGs recognize that action and or inaction in one area will affect outcomes in other areas, and that development must balance social, economic, and environmental sustainability. So let's jump in to understand what are these 17 Sustainable Development Goals. We're not going to cover them all individually. It will take too much time. Please do some additional reading if you are interested in what these development goals are. But what we'll do is we'll highlight some of the 17 Sustainable Development Goals and their importance, and maybe more focus on the key areas in which you should look at for your research, potentially for preparation for an interview or in your applications. So the 17 Sustainable Development Goals, SDGs, to transform our world are as follows. What's the difference between the MDGs and SDGs? You may have come across the MDGs in your research, but let's just quickly explain the difference between the two. The MDGs were the Millennium Development Goals, and the SDGs are the Sustainable Development Goals. Both are development agendas adopted by the United Nations to improve the lives of people around the world. However, there's some key differences between the two, and it's worth noting these to understand where the UN has come from and where the UN is now, and the slight change. So the MDGs were established in 2000 with a target completion date of 2015, while the SDGs were adopted in 2015 and have a target completion date of 2030. Same time frame, one follows the other. The MDGs were focused on specific time-bound targets for reducing poverty, improving health, and promoting gender equality and education, among obviously other areas. The SDGs are more comprehensive, cover a broader range of sustainable development issues, including economic growth, social development, and environmental protection. The MDGs adopted a more narrow sectoral approach to development, whereas the SDGs take a more integrated and holistic approach, recognizing, as the MDGs perhaps didn't, that sustainable development requires action in multiple interconnected areas. It can't just be focused on one area. The MDGs were primarily the responsibility of governments and international organizations, so heavily weighted towards a certain part of the world and people in that space. Whereas the SDGs emphasize the role of all stakeholders, including governments, private sector, civil society, and individuals, just like you. And overall, the SDGs build upon the progress that was made under the MDGs in aim to create a more sustainable, equitable, and inclusive world. So, thinking about the SDGs and what was before the MDGs, how can we promote sustainable development? And what can each one of us do? Well, sustainable development can be promoted in several ways, but it's worth focusing on what we talked about before, the stakeholders. So who can do what? Government action is one key part. So governments can play a key role in promoting sustainable development by creating enabling policies and regulations that support, for example, investing in infrastructure, promoting sustainable practices. That's one area, so governments. The second area is private sector involvement. So this is private enterprise, private companies. The private sector can invest in sustainable technologies, adopt sustainable business practices, engage in corporate social responsibility initiatives as well. So that's the kind of government interlink into the private sector, but then it becomes broader. This is where again we think about the MDGs going to the SDGs. We talk about community engagement. So communities can be involved in sustainable efforts through education and awareness. Um, for example, participating in local initiatives and projects. Then becomes a focus to connect all of these together. So international cooperation, so not just thinking at a local level or, for example, a country level, but international cooperation. International cooperation can help to address global and promote sustainable development through the sharing of knowledge and resources, not just within a country, but across borders. Responsible consumption and production is also another area. So this is consumers, like you and I. So consumers can promote sustainable development by reducing waste, conserving resources, and supporting sustainable and eco-friendly products. Then there's also a focus, which is very prominent at the moment, and rightly so, is climate action. Addressing the challenge of climate change is central to promoting sustainable development. This requires reducing greenhouse gas emissions, adapting to the impacts of climate change, and investing in renewable energy and energy efficiency. And the last one is innovation. So not just focused on technology, but developing and applying new technologies and business models can help to drive sustainable development and promote economic growth that is both inclusive and environmentally sustainable. So let's think about the third part. So what can you do? What can each one of us do? Every positive action you take in and outside your day-to-day, be it working in an office, going to university, no matter how small you think it may be, can make a difference. Supporting local communities, a Clean the Beach campaign, switching to greener products, standing up for justice, reminding leaders, be it school leaders, university leaders, in the workplace, of the promise of global goals are a good place to start. And that leads me on to the final part, which is, will the SDGs be reached? A really good question and something to consider if you are interested in a role in the UN or you are studying, you're interested in the topic of SDGs, is will the SDGs be reached by 2020? Sorry, by 2030. Reaching the SDGs by the target date of 2030 will be a major challenge, no doubt. It requires sustained effort and commitment from governments, businesses, and civil society. So all the stakeholders we talked about before. And while significant progress has been made in some areas, there's still much work to be done to fully achieve the SDGs. Factors such as limited resources, political instability, economic inequality, and the most recent impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic have all hindered progress. However, it's important to note that the SDGs serve as a long-term vision for a better and more sustainable world, and that progress towards the goals is not binary. The evolution from the MDGs to the SDGs means even if the targets are not met by 2030, continued efforts to achieve them will still bring about positive change and improvement, and that's the key part. The SDGs are seen, or should be seen, as a guide for action and not as a deadline or a finish line. I hope you find that really useful to give you a quick whistle-stop tour of the SDGs, what they are, the key areas to focus on. If you do need any support, be it that you are applying for a role at the UN, you're interested in the UN, careers at the UN, please get in touch with us at unitedcareercoalition.org. A quick overview of the services we offer: application and interview guidance. We have a quick guide that you can download to get all the tips and tricks from our UCC insiders, that are those that have worked, applied and secured UN system roles. You can speak to a UN expert, to somebody that's worked at the UN or is currently even working at the UN, for advice via video, which is a 45-minute quick call. You can get document review. So for example, your application documents, be it your cover letter, your motivational letter, anything you like, we'll have a review and give our guidance on tips and tricks and potential pitfalls that we've seen in the past from people. And you can also learn via webinars. We have a collection of webinars ranging from interview tips to understanding what it's like to become a diplomat. You can have a look at. Please subscribe on YouTube, follow us on LinkedIn, and subscribe there, and soon we'll have a new book out for Amazon Kindle for those that use Kindle. Thanks very much for watching. Please subscribe and hope you find it useful.